Good afternoon and welcome to Match Point, our live coverage of the Australian Open 2018. And we have a cracker of a women's singles final coming up in a short while. It's the world number one and the top seed, Simona Halep of Romania, up against Caroline Wozniacki of Denmark, the number two seed. Very tough to make any predictions on this one. And both these players really hungry for their first Grand Slam title. To analyze the prospects of this match and the players, it gives me great pleasure to welcome in our studios two tennis experts, Sanjeev Kasal and Vishal Uppal, of course, former India Davis Cupper. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And let's talk about the players first, and starting with Simona Halep, the top seed. Relatively short, 5'6", the 26-year-old, but certainly not short in stature in terms of her rankings. World number one currently, Simona Halep, a gritty fighter, and indeed she has come back even in her road to the finals here on two occasions, saving match points. But we'll talk about that a little later. But first about the style of play, and you know, Sanjeev, what Simona loses in her height, she makes up on her speed and her court coverage, isn't it?
Certainly, Gaurav. In fact, I totally agree with you. The fact that she's only 5'6", she has to be one of my favorite players, simply because in spite of not being that tall and not having that big serve and that big volley, she's a phenomenal athlete. She's done very well with her game simply by being an aggressive baseliner. She's modeled a game somewhat like a Justine Henin, pillar to post, never giving up, the sort of player who has won an amazing number of matches from match points down. So actually, I'm not overly surprised that she's come back in two matches where she was down.
Yes, absolutely. And let's look at, of course, that's the match coming up. Caroline Wozniacki, the number two seed, against Simona Halep, the top seed. And let's show you some of the vital stats for both these players. Simona Halep, as we were saying, of course, 5'6" and 26 years old against 27-year-old Caroline Wozniacki of Denmark. And should be a cracker of a match. As I said, both these players are very similar in their styles. Baseliners, solid forehands, not a very strong serve for both of them, but they more than make up for their court coverage and their speed on court. In fact, the interesting thing about Simona Halep is on day two of these championships, she actually twisted her ankle. We'll talk about that. But look at the vital stats there. Very close in world rankings, number one versus two. 16 career titles versus 27 for Wozniacki. And the significant stat there, of course, head-to-head. Wozniacki leads 4-2. Significantly, she won the last two occasions these two played in 2017 in Eastbourne and the WTA finals in Singapore. Both are right-handed, of course, and the height-wise, it is actually Wozniacki who has the advantage at she's 5'10". Very little separating these two. But Vishal, coming to Wozniacki, you know, she's one of those players who's been world number one for many weeks, 67 weeks at one point. And there was a controversy and a lot of debate on the ranking systems because someone who's been there at world number one for that long, yet to win a Grand Slam title. What do you think our prospects are today?
Well, obviously she's in the final of a Grand Slam, so she's going to be super excited to be in this final. And I think for both the players, this is going to be a huge mental battle because both of them trying to get their first Grand Slam under their belt. Both have been ranked number one without having won a Grand Slam, which obviously adds a little bit more pressure, you know, on you because you don't want to be that player who was ranked number one and never won a Grand Slam. So I think for Wozniacki also, this is a huge opportunity for her. And yet, you know, it will really depend on who can come out firing sooner and who can keep their nerves in check. Both girls have a lot of experience behind them. They both know each other's game really well. Even though Wozniacki might be leading 4-2 in the head-to-head, but today that all goes out of the window because this is a Grand Slam final. Nerves will play a big role, and I think how well these girls prepare themselves mentally and physically will really tell us at the end who is the winner.
Absolutely. It will come down to nerves. And as I said, both these players are desperate for that first Grand Slam titles. Lots at stake. Also, the world #1 at stake, remember, because whoever wins this match will then move. Simona has already won #1, but if she loses this final, she loses that world #1 ranking as well. So lots at stake in this final. But let's see the road to the finals, and starting with Simona Halep on how they've got here to the finals. And as we see the road to the finals, you can see that Simona Halep really had two very, very close matches. Semi-final, if you see the bottom there, against Angelique Kerber. 9-7 in the decider, and significantly, she saved 2 match points in that semi-final to emerge victorious. And then if you go back to the third round against Lauren Davis of US, another marathon there for Simona Halep. 15-13. That match went 3 hours and 45 minutes. And once again, Simona saving 2 match points in that match to come back. So, Sanjeev, we were talking about the mental aspect and the gritty fighter that Simona is. You have it there in the road to the finals, twice almost down and out, and then coming back.
Absolutely. This never give up attitude that she has. Actually, both the finalists have come back, as you know, from match points down. With Simona Halep, I would say that probably this might be in her destiny to win today, because she's been close so many times earlier, especially in the last year's French Open. She was a set-up and 3-love up against Ostapenko and lost from there. So from a tenacity point of view, they both have it, but I have a feeling that Simona just might go the distance today.
Interesting. And let's see. Vishal, I want to cover the aspect of the mental. You spoke about the mental aspect and nerves. Interesting that Simona is being coached by Darren Cahill, a former Australian Davis Cupper. And he mentioned, in fact, last week at the start of the Australian Open, on how they've been working on the mental aspect. Simona mentally now very strong with that never say die attitude. But being a top player yourself, what do you think they work on when someone like Cahill works with Simona? What do you think he works on this mental
Well, I think one of the biggest things you can work on with an athlete when they're going on such a big stage is to encourage them to start trusting themselves even more, to not give in to the doubts that might come up in your head, and just to stay the course, focusing on the process of what you're doing and focusing on your execution. You don't, as a player, you never want to get too far ahead and start thinking what happens if I win this game, if I win this set, or you'd never want to go in the future, but at the same time, you don't want to hold on to the past either. Obviously, Simona Halep was in pole position in the French Open to win the finals, but just broke down. So I think Darren Cahill has played a huge role in putting Simona Halep together, and he'll be very vital for her preparation today. And hopefully, he'll be able to help Simona get into a mind space where she can let go of the demons, she can let go of the pressure of trying to win her first Grand Slam, and really come out and do what she's done this entire 2 weeks, which is play with a lot of tenacity, with a lot of belief, and that never say die attitude, which has helped her get to the finals.
Absolutely. The mental aspect so important, the role of the coach so important. Sanjeev, quick comment from you. Wozniacki, similarly, known to be mentally very fragile. In fact, if you see her record, 2017, 6 successive WTA finals she's lost. Does she have it in her to get to the big one?
Certainly. Look, if she's in the final, like Vishal rightly said, why not? This final, Gaurav, in a way, is some sort of a comeback for her, at least on the big stage. If you look at the fact that she's been away from a Grand Slam finals for over 4 years. So, in that sense, it's relatively sort of revisiting an old territory, so to say. Does she have it in her? Certainly. And another point I wanted to make about Caroline is that if you look at the length of the matches both these girls have played, Caroline is better preserved. She hasn't played a 9-7 in the third, and she hasn't played a 15-13 in the third round as Simona has. So does she have a little more in her tank? Perhaps. So if you go simply by virtue of who's better preserved and who might come out fresher, it's probably Caroline.
Okay, great. We will, of course, come back. Very interesting discussion here and some great points from our experts. But we'll go for a short commercial break. Stay right with us. Welcome back, and it's coming up very shortly, of course, the exciting women's singles final at the Australian Open, Caroline Wozniacki against the top seed Halep. And we are talking about the two players, and Caroline Wozniacki of Denmark. It's been a story of so near and yet so far for her so far in the Grand Slams. Of course, 27 WTA titles for Wozniacki so far. And an interesting stat there, she is the only player, Vishal, who's got those many WTA titles, or in fact, even in the men's, if you see the tour titles, who has not won a Grand Slam. So that's the one big gap in her career, and I'm sure it plays on her mind.
Yes, and that just shows you the importance of mental toughness and how to prepare yourself mentally. Obviously, the biggest stage has got to her so far, but let's not forget, she's a more matured player now. She's a more matured human being now, which I think should help her, really tackle the demons in her head. And for me, I'm quite excited to see this match because I think this will be a cracker of a match. Both women trying to win their first Grand Slam title. Both women, very well prepared. Really raring to go, and I think at the end this match might just come down to a few points here or there.
Yes, the demons in the mind are so critical, and just going back a few years ago, Caroline was in the semi-finals at the Australian Open against Li Na, who went on, of course, to win that title. But in that semi-final, significantly, she was 5-4 up, having won the first set and match point up, and lost it from there. And I'm sure those demons are something she has to really battle with.
Well, 5-4 and serving, I have to say in women's tennis is not as big a deal as it would be in men's tennis, simply because they trade service breaks a lot. It's a lot more common to see this in women's tennis. When they're 5-4, it's not a done deal. If you're a Sharapova, if you're a Serena Williams, two aces at an average in a game, or two super serves which are unreturnable, you can expect them to close it out. But you have players like Wozniacki and Halep routinely having a problem closing matches when they're ahead, simply because their serves doesn't necessarily give them that big edge.
Right. No, that's a very important point you make. And just going back to Wozniacki, let's see her road to the finals and how she's progressed into the match that's coming up. And indeed, she's also had some very, very close matches, and in fact the second round, and that's the one I want to highlight, if you see, and before that, of course, Simona Halep's Grand Slam record, and before we come to the road to the finals for Caroline. And you can see for Simona, her best performance really has been, she's been finalist twice at the French Open, 2014 where she lost to Sharapova, and 2017, last year, also a finalist at the French Open, where she lost to Ostapenko. Again, in that final, she was actually 3-0 up in that deciding set, Vishal, and lost it from there.
Yes, she did, and I think she got too far ahead of herself and started thinking about winning the title as opposed to just focusing on the process and staying with the game plan that got her to that commanding lead. So I think it'll be very important for both players today to just focus on one point at a time and try and build points together. You never want to get too far ahead of yourself, because the weight of that pressure is so high that it can make many a strong one just fall by the wayside. So I think both these players will be very aware of that fact, that they've been in the finals before and they haven't quite won it, and let's hope that their desperation to win a Grand Slam final doesn't get the better of either of the player, and they can come out fighting on all cylinders and really put up a show here today.
Absolutely, we are all waiting with bated breath. Now let's get back to Wozniacki and her road to the finals, and as I was saying, she too has demonstrated her fighting prowess here, and look at that match in that second round against Jana Fett of Croatia. In that deciding set, what that scoreline doesn't say is that Wozniacki was trailing 1-5 in the deciding set, came back from 1-5 down and again saved 2 match points.
15-40, I think 1-5,
and
15-40.
to win it from there. So Sanjeev, showing that, while her mental fragility might have been questioned in the past, certainly her track record at this Australian Open is showing that she's quite determined.
You're absolutely right. I mean, when you have a match like that, her second round win, 1-5 down, 15-40, you really think that, like she said yesterday in a press conference, that I should have been back home by now. I'm really surprised I'm still here in Melbourne. So I think she surprised herself, obviously hung in there, fought it out, but got lucky. There's an element of luck that you can't take away, and I'm sure Vishal will agree with me. If you're 1-5 down, it's like love 5, love 40, 15-40. I mean, it's not too far off. Yes. So I think that was a phenomenal win for her and probably propelled her on to win the rest of her matches. But having said that, Gaurav, her semi-final with, I just want to speak a little bit about the match with Kerber. When she was serving for that match after winning the first set, 5-4, 30 love, she got tight and she served a couple of double faults. So there was a certain amount of, you can say, in fact, let me correct that, that's Mertens she was playing, the girl from Belgium.
Right.
She got tight. And this happens when you're very close to victory many times. There's just as you have a fear of losing, you have a fear of winning. And what I really commend her for is the fact that yes, she lost her serve then and it went into a tiebreaker, but she contained herself, stayed in the present and came back and won the tiebreaker. So those demons that entered her head, yes, she was able to sort of brush that aside.
Okay, and let's look at Wozniacki's Grand Slam record. Of course, she's not won a Grand Slam title, as we've been saying, but has got pretty close there. Twice finalist at the US Open, Wozniacki, and in that terms of the Grand Slam record for her, but she's still not got that crucial win in the final. As you can see, the Grand Slam record there, and focus on the last column, which is the US Open. This doesn't go right back. It shows her as a finalist, of course, in 2014, but before that she was also a finalist in 2009. So twice finalist. 2014 she lost that final to Serena Williams, but so near and yet so far, and today might be the day, Vishal, for Wozniacki.
Well, yeah, it'll be definitely be the day for one of the two girls, and the other one will be licking their wounds. But again, just to speak a bit about Wozniacki, she hasn't had the best of form in the last few years. She's really struggled on the court and off the court also. She had some personal issues. But having said that, that's where, earlier when I spoke about her becoming a more matured player has come to the fore at this Australian Open, where it would have been quite easy for her to just throw in the towel at 1-5, 15-40 down. But she fought on and she fought on. And here she is in the finals with another opportunity to win a Grand Slam. So I think she's going to be quite fired up. She's going to be ready for this match, and both the girls, they know their game, each other's game inside out. There's no hidden secret here. I think the key to success for both Caroline Wozniacki and Simona Halep will be the mental side. Can they come out there and stay focused on their game plan and execute it to the best of their ability? And at the end of the day, the person who can keep it together mentally and physically is going to be the one who will win.
Talking about mental turmoil, Wozniacki, of course, went through a big emotional upheaval 4 years back. She was engaged, remember, to golfer Rory McIlroy. That broke off and led to a lot of distress for her. But Sanjeev, once again, showed great fighting abilities to come right back and get over that.
Absolutely. That was an emotionally draining period for her, I'm sure, but at the end of the day, she's a tennis player, and her job is on the tennis court, and her personal life did take a dip, but I think she came back and played some great tennis after that.
All right, let's take another short break here, but stay right with us because we are a short way away now from that ladies singles final. Welcome back, and we are a short while away from going live to the Australian Open. But before that, quickly with my experts here, I want to discuss an important trend in the women's game. Ever since Serena Williams really dominated for a decade, but ever since her pregnancy, we've had a flurry of different champions in the Grand Slams. If you look at 2017, Serena, of course, won the Australian Open. Then it was Ostapenko, at the French Open, Muguruza in the at Wimbledon, and Sloane Stephens, who won the US Open and after that has not won a single match. Vishal, very interesting trend, and of course today we will have a new Grand Slam champion. But
Yeah.
what do you think is it the depth of the talent?
Well, I think definitely the most dominant women's player of all time, Serena Williams, not in the draw, but opens doors for other girls to try and fulfill a dream of winning a Grand Slam. Also, I think the depth in women's tennis has improved quite a bit. You see all these players popping up, and you never know who's going to win the next slam. So another exciting champion.
Okay, thank you. And the stage is set now at Melbourne Park for the women's singles final. So let's go straight across to Melbourne for live action.